In Seoul, Jin-Woo, Korea, Jin-Woo lived as an E-rank hunter. As he walked, he thought that aside from having a slightly better build than an average person and a somewhat faster recovery rate, it was embarrassing to even call himself a hunter. Constant injuries were nothing unusual for him, and as if that wasn't enough, he often brushed against death. He reminded himself that being a hunter was a dangerous job he never chose out of enjoyment. When he arrived at a construction site in the sewers, he reflected that he was barely managing to pay for his sick mother's hospital bills with the financial aid provided by the Thunders Association. Having only graduated from high school and lacking any special skills, he had no other choice but to work as a hunter. There, a man offered tea and wished good luck for the day's raid. Another man approached Jin-Woo, calling him Kim, and said it had been a long time since they had last met. Kim recognized him as Park and asked why he was there, reminding him that he had said he was quitting the business for good. Park replied that his wife was pregnant with their second child, so he had returned. Kim commented that there was nothing like a good raid to bring in money. Park admitted he was worried since it had been a long time since his last raid. His skills had never been great, and the break had only made him worse. Soon, others greeted Jin-Woo warmly, saying it was good to see him, that it must have been cold on his way there, and they thanked him for coming. Jin-Woo smiled and told them not to mention it, adding that he was looking forward to working with them as always. Kim then asked if he had eaten yet, to which Jin-Woo replied that he had, and they thanked him for answering. Watching this, Park wondered if Jin-Woo was actually a strong hunter, since everyone seemed so glad to see him. But when asked, he admitted he didn't know, because Jin-Woo had joined after he had quit. He added, however, that Jin-Woo was known by the nickname, the weakest hunter of all mankind. Looking at the others, he remarked that this was the same way people would look at an S-rank hunter like Choi. Jin-Woo was known as the weakest hunter, far below the commanders, which meant he was always getting injured, even in E-rank raids. He was probably the weakest among them all, if not the weakest of mankind. Kim remarked that Jin-Woo's presence on duty was proof the dungeon would be an easy one, so they should just leave it at that, though Jin-Woo might overhear. Jin-Woo thought he had already heard every word they had spoken. He then excused himself and asked a man for a cup of coffee. The man apologized, explaining that the coffee had already run out. Jin-Woo thought to himself that he couldn't even get a single cup of coffee. As he walked away, the man continued apologizing, and Jin-Woo reassured him that it was totally fine. A girl approached Jin-Woo, asking if he had hurt himself again. She added that she would also be going on the raid. Joo-hee agreed, saying that wasn't the issue. What mattered was what had happened with Jin-Woo recently. Jin-Woo admitted that things had simply ended up that way. Joo-hee asked whether he had even been hospitalized. They both sat down, and Jin-Woo explained that although it had been only an E-rank dungeon, he was the only one who got hurt. Joo-hee was surprised and asked how that could even be possible. Jin-Woo replied that all the others were high-ranking, so they hadn't bothered to bring a healer. Joo-hee questioned how they could go without a healer just because they were confident they wouldn't be injured. Jin-Woo told her it was fine, since it was his own fault for being weak, and he was already used to misfortune. After a while, he stood up and said it was time to head into the gate. When they gathered there, the leader announced that he was sure everyone was looking forward to having a good time and hitting the jackpot. Although he admitted he wasn't really in a position to say it, he was considering taking charge as the party leader, and he asked how that sounded to the others. No one objected, and even Jin-Woo agreed. Cheol, the leader, told everyone to head inside and reminded Jin-Woo to stay behind them so he wouldn't get hurt, advising him to take it easy. Jin-Woo agreed to enter as well, saying he would give it his all. Outside, the people who had stayed behind were talking among themselves. One asked Hung why he seemed so preoccupied. Another replied that he felt uneasy because he hadn't been able to give Jin-Woo a cup of tea before the raid. The first man pointed out that Jin-Woo was the weakest of all the D-rank hunters, and now he was inside a dungeon. The other explained that although it was only a D-rank dungeon, he had never once seen Jin-Woo come out of a raid without injuries while working under the Hunters Association, and that was likely the reason for his worry. The first man wondered aloud what the worst could possibly happen, then suggested they just go inside. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, Jin-Woo was already injured. Joo-hee tended to him and asked why he was so determined to remain a hunter. She warned that if he kept pushing himself like this, one day he would land in serious trouble. Jin-Woo apologized, but she told him she wasn't asking for an apology. She was only worried about him. As they spoke, they both glanced at the others fighting monsters. Joo-hee thought at least the raid was nearly over, and that made her feel relieved. A man remarked that it seemed everything was just about done. Even the commander praised Park for his performance, and Park brushed it off, saying it had been easy for him. Joo-hee turned back to Jin-Woo and asked if there was any particular reason he couldn't quit being a hunter. Jin-Woo replied that he was doing it as a hobby, adding that he would probably die of boredom without it. Inwardly, he thought he would only feel embarrassed if he revealed his true personal circumstances. Joo-hee told Jin-Woo that if he wanted a hobby, he should just stick to that, otherwise he would end up doing raids every night. Jin-Woo laughed lightly at her words, but she scolded him to stop, warning that his wounds might reopen. Chi-yul then addressed everyone, explaining that when they defeated a beast, they would be awarded essence stones. Even a C-rank magical beast could yield one, each worth over 10 million gold. But for an E-rank hunter like Jin-Woo, fighting a C-rank magical beast was completely out of reach. Jin-Woo looked on, thinking he couldn't believe that something so rare was given in exchange for risking his life. It felt like a pitiful reward, and at that rate, it would take him forever to get anywhere. Just then, a man called the others over, saying he had found another entrance. They all gathered to check it out. Chi-yul speculated that it might be a double dungeon and wondered if such a thing truly existed. He used his power to cast light inside, revealing a passage that stretched far ahead. He then told everyone to remember that a gate would not close unless the dungeon boss was defeated. Since the gate was still open, there had to be a boss inside. Normally, they would need to report this to the association and wait for instructions. However, if they delayed, other hunters might seize the boss before them, which would mean their profits would decrease. Because of that, he suggested they go ahead and deal with the boss themselves, even though it could be dangerous. He proposed that all 17 of them vote on the matter, warning that once the decision was made, no one would be allowed to go back on it. As the group voted, Joo-hee was the only one to oppose the idea. In the end, the votes were tied at 8 against 8. With everyone's eyes turning toward him, Chi-yul asked Jin-Woo for his vote. Jin-Woo thought that everything now depended on his decision. He had no savings, his younger sister needed to be sent to college, and his mother was bedridden in the hospital. For the sake of his family, he told himself he had to show courage. In the end, he agreed to go inside. They continued venturing deeper, the path stretching endlessly, and some wondered how long they had been walking. One of them mentioned that it had already been around 40 minutes, and since the gate would close an hour after the boss was defeated, that would leave only 20 minutes. Someone suggested they should turn back. Jin-Woo quietly apologized to Joo-hee, saying she had been forced to come because of his decision to enter. Joo-hee told him she was fine and that he didn't need to worry about her. Jin-Woo still wondered if she truly was. Joo-hee glared at him and insisted she was completely fine. Then, losing her patience, she shouted that he must be out of his mind. If that stab he had taken earlier had landed just a little higher, he would have had a hole straight through his heart. The same went for his arms and legs. She had barely managed to heal those injuries. She accused him of being reckless, demanding how he could have agreed to enter again and asking what he would do if he had taken a blow to the head. Her voice shook with frustration as she demanded an answer. Jin-Woo thought to himself that the only reason he was alive was because she was a healer. He felt deeply indebted to her and apologized. Joo-hee asked if he was truly sorry. When he admitted he was, she told him that if he felt bad, he could treat her to a meal sometime. Jin-Woo blushed, and Joo-hee teased him, asking if he didn't want to eat with her. Flustered, Jin-Woo replied it wasn't like that at all. Of course he wanted to. Suddenly, someone called out that they had found the boss's lair. Before them stood a giant door. One remarked that he had never come across a door in a dungeon before. Though it was a first for all of them, it seemed strange and ominous. Park admitted he had the same bad feeling. Chi-yul stepped forward, reaching toward the door. He asked if they really planned to turn back empty-handed after coming all this way. He reminded them they could be the first to discover a new dungeon, declaring that those who wished to leave could do so, but he would go in even if it meant entering alone. Some whispered among themselves, saying Chi-yul had countless raids under his belt and was a high-ranking C-rank hunter. Another added that if he weren't already over 60 years old, he would have surely been recruited by one of the major guilds. Since they had trusted him enough to come this far, they might as well follow him to the end. The massive door opened more easily than expected. As they entered, fire lamps around the enormous chamber burst alight. One of them muttered that they had never seen such a dungeon before. They split up to look around. The place felt untouched for ages, and something about the stone statues unsettled them. Each statue held something different, strange instruments, and their sheer number made the room eerie. The oppressive silence gave them the sense that unseen eyes were upon them. At the center loomed a colossal statue seated on a throne. Some wondered if it depicted a fox, though it was clearly nothing more than stone. No monsters or beasts were in sight. Then Deepak noticed a divination circle etched into the floor. He called Chiyul over, saying there was something written there. Chiyul inspected it and explained that it resembled a pre-unit inscription, the commandments of the Gartanan temple, demanding worship of the gods. Suddenly, Juhi grabbed Jin-Woo's arm, whispering that the statue's pupils had moved and were staring at them. Jin-Woo tried to reassure her that she was mistaken, but a chill crept through him. The silence was too heavy, too unnatural. Something was wrong. Chiyul continued reading. Those who failed to obey the commandments would not be spared. At that moment, the giant door slammed shut behind them. Panic spread as some shouted, asking what they should do. One man finally lost his composure, saying he had tried to be patient, but this nonsense was the last straw. He cursed their decision to enter a dungeon like this without the association and declared he was leaving. He told them to take all the treasure and the boss for themselves, since he didn't care. Wishing them luck, he reached for the door handle. Chiyul shouted for him not to touch it, but it was too late. The moment his hand touched the handle, a stone statue swung its weapon and beheaded him. Then the statue moved, stepping down to attack the others. Shock rippled through the group as they realized the statues were coming alive. Juhi clung to Jin-Woo in fear. Jin-Woo's mind raced. Juhi's warning about the moving pupils had been right. He turned toward the giant statue and saw it. Its eyes were truly watching them. If you like this video, so comment down for the next part.